want to open my talk with a conspiracy theory. Now, you'll notice my question is, what if God is a dog? Now, I think that I might have some proof about this. Now, at home, I have bookshelves, and on one shelf is a whole shelf full of dog books, none of which I have ever actually read. But they're there, so when somebody comes in and looks, they can say, oh, she knows a lot about dogs. Well, I also have a shelf full of spirituality books. I've read more of those, but also not all of them. So when I pulled down this book off of the dog shelf, I thought, well, isn't that interesting? Look at the dimensions of this book. Look at the color. And then I went to my spirituality, and I found another book. Same size, same shape. So I thought, well, this is the complete dog book. Wouldn't that make this the complete God book? Right? Okay, so I'm going with that theory. That I'll bet if you were to swap the innards of these two books, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference, right? Right? Well, that actually leads me into what is true of my life. Now, I grew up with dogs. My dad was he was an amateur dog breeder. I say amateur because it was it was a hobby. So when we lived up in Michigan, he bred Alaskan Malamutes, the sled dogs. Gorgeous dogs, beautiful. They were totally fitting in Michigan. There's a lot of snow. It made sense. And then we moved to New York, to Long Island, to suburban Long Island. We lived backed up to a golf course. And he decided to breed Siberian Huskies. Now, as you might imagine, we were not popular because he built cages, kennels, out on this paddle tennis court we had out and back. So here are these husky dogs and puppies. And as you might well imagine, what they do is they learn to howl. So the lady next door, this older lady, who was always matched, all her clothes matched. She would have orange fingernails, orange lipstick. Her hair would be orange, but she complained all the time. But then when my dad thought it was a good idea to get a dog sled that we could use on the golf course, anytime there was more than 1 inch of snow, she was not happy, especially since we weren't members of the golf course. They wouldn't have us as members. But so where that ties into God is that my dad was also a minister. He was a Congregationalist minister. And so you would think that there was more talk about God than there was. There actually wasn't. My dad wasn't. He was a great minister. He was a great people person. He was really good at that stuff. But when he died, he left us a letter to read that said that he had been a lifelong agnostic, that he was never entirely convinced of the biblical rendition of God. I think what he had come to understand was that God showed up in sentient beings, that we were God beings, that we were what God is made up of, in God's image. But he also understood that all creatures were made in God's image. So what I want to tell you about today, this is from our class. Ree gave us these little teeny tiny books, and my entire talk is in here. There it is right there. There's the whole thing right there. Uh, so what I want to talk about today is one of the things that came up in class was the question was asked, are animals conscious in the way we talk about consciousness? And there wasn't really a good answer to that. And then happened to be looking through the book, and I found this quote in there. It said, consciousness sleeps in mineral life, dreams in plant life, awakens in animal life, and comes to self-consciousness in human life. So that awakening in animal life, that's what caught me, because I realized that part of how we become conscious is that there are experiences we have. There are things that happen to us in our lives that require us to seek a deeper understanding of why this stuff happens. What is this about? So I didn't get my own dog until I think I was 32. And we heard about this runt of the litter, the last puppy, the one nobody else wanted. She was the product of a 9-year-old golden retriever who got knocked up by a wandering black lab who was in the neighborhood. So she had had 8 puppies, and the friend said, "Hey, do you want this dog? It's only $50." Like, I guess, okay, yeah, why not? I realized that even though I had been surrounded by dogs all my life, I didn't really have a consciousness of dogs in my own experience. So I wasn't really sure what one does with one's own dog, because the dogs were never my dog. And so Murphy and I would go, we'd go walking up in the woods. And as she got older, this was up in Vermont. There were snowmobile trails, all these great walking places. And in Vermont, dogs just mostly run free. You know, there's not a lot of confinement. There's not a lot of confinement of anybody. It is a happening place. So Murphy and I would go for walks up in the woods, and she'd go off somewhere. She'd get up around the corner beyond me, and always about 5 minutes later, I'd see her again, and she'd come back, and she'd make sure I was still with her. And she was always on her way to her favorite swimming hole. It was this little stream that came down, and I knew that that's where I would find her if I got there. So I spent a winter on the coast of Maine before I moved to Florida. It was a very snowy, cold winter. And I would take Murph for a walk to the beach. This is on Bailey Island. And it would be so cold, I would have on all of these snow clothes. I had this hat that had flaps and the things and the front and around, and only my eyes were peeping out. And they were freezing. My eyeballs were freezing. I had to keep moving them so they didn't get locked in place. So we would go down to the beach, such as it was, and Murphy would go in the ocean. The ocean in Maine in August is like 30 degrees. This was January. She would dive into the water, and there would be actual icebergs floating around out there. She was such a good retriever. She loved to play with balls and stuff. Went onto a softball field once in the middle of a game and just took the ball. But she's out there chasing icebergs. And so we went home. She's fine, nothing, no problem. And then it came time for me to think about moving to Florida. And I thought for sure that Murphy would roast to death if she came here, that this was not going to work. But it was insisted that I bring her. And it wasn't long before I realized she would go out in the driveway in August when the cement was 400 degrees and she would sun herself. I'm like, dog, do you not have an internal thermostat? So we got here, and I was taking a walk one day with her, and somebody said to me, "Are you the pet sitter?" And I said, and I looked behind me, was like, "Is she talking to somebody else?" And no. Why do you ask? Somebody said that described you, and that's what that you looked like, and you had a black dog, and so the next day I'm out walking the dog again, and I run into somebody who is pretty much my mirror self, short dark hair, black dog. I'm like, oh, you're the pet sitter that they thought I was, But then it occurred to me, I wasn't sure what I was doing with myself down here. I didn't have a job. I was going to school to learn interactive media, and I needed something to do to make money. And I said, "Oh, you must be the pet sitter." And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "Oh, well, if you ever need any help." And she said, "Oh my God, I've been doing this by myself for 3 years, and my husband is ready to divorce me." So, Rebecca, do you have that slide? So, I became a professional pet sitter. Now, this is not why I came to Florida. This was not my intention. I thought that when you go to Florida, somewhere other than Vermont, where there are no real job opportunities, I thought, I'll come down here and I'll become this and that and all the other things. And it turned out that I ended up doing this for 16 years. Now, understand, these photographs were staged. This is not actually how it worked. But I did have all those dogs in my house at one time, a couple of times. And this is where my own awakening started to happen. Now, as a professional pet sitter, you mostly go to people's houses, you take Fifi out, you walk them and do the thing. You have a key to their house. They trust you to come inside when they are not home. It's a fairly big deal to live in that realm of trust. But so sometimes the dogs would come to my house. Now this photo on the right was a 4th of July, and that time we have across the street a young man. Actually, he's 47 now. He's not that young, but he is profoundly disabled. He is just this side of vegetative. The only thing that makes him not vegetative is that he can swallow on his own. So he lives in a wheelchair, a specially molded wheelchair for himself. And I've noticed that every time I would have him over, I was also a Matthew watcher. He would come to my house, and we would take care of him. I noticed that every time there was also a dog in the house, I watched what the dogs would do with him. You may have the yappiest, wiggliest, craziest dog, and they would go over to him, to his wheelchair, and they would just, it was almost reverent. Like they knew something about him that we didn't know. And this was so interesting to me because I thought, I knew that there's something special there, that communication between dogs and babies and that thing. But when these guys were there, we also had Matthew for the week. It's the only time we've ever had him for a whole week. And I thought, okay, this is insane. I shouldn't be doing this. This is like, but then I thought about my dad, and I'm like, oh, Dad, I am like you, aren't I? Doing the things that probably ought not be done and getting away with them. So 7 dogs and Matthew. And Matthew requires help in all things. And so I would take him into the guest bedroom where he was staying, and I would put him on the bed, and all 7 of them would come into this 10-foot by 10-foot room full of furniture. They would find a place to lie down, and they would be in there with that experience. They would bring their consciousness into that space. And I realized that dogs, there's something about them. Now, I love cats too. Cats are awesome. But cats are another notch down on the unawareness scale. Cats sleep 18 to 20 hours a day. Therefore, there's not a lot of time for them to, change the world. So, but but this led me then to exploring more, what is this? So now, not being a big fat book reader, I started to watch The Dog Whisperer on TV. And this guy is awesome. He is a Mexican immigrant. He came here through nefarious means and became he took care of people's dogs in the Hollywood area. Now, he started to train people's dogs. He wasn't a dog trainer, but he had grown up in Mexico where dogs just do what they do. And people come in, get into relationship with them and help them become balanced, I guess. So what he would do is what we have done to animals. Let me tell you. I'm going to show you what we have done to dogs. All right, in my handy dandy little basket here, I have some things. There's a thing here. There's a dog thing. There's things we throw at them. There's even would you believe it? This is one of their favorites. There's the big bones, and there's things, and you throw them around, and there's other things. Here, Keith, that's for you. More things. But what we've done, this is a really interesting thing that I realized about dogs and God when I came to Florida. Now, as I said, New England's pretty loosey-goosey. They were the original Puritans, but over time they've kind of mellowed a little bit, which is a good thing. So I come to Florida, and there are mega churches. There are people, it's right or it's wrong. And what I know is that dogs don't really give two hangs about right and wrong. They're going to do what's expedient for them. They're also going to do what you feel, like what Heather was talking about. They're very connected to how you feel. And so we got the leashes, we got the things, the barbaric things, the things that go around the neck, the really barbaric things. However, I will tell you, and there is great argument in the dog community about the use of something like this. Now, I will tell you that as somebody who is now a bit more frail in my life, this is a lifesaver. Because if a dog is not well trained, does not know how to be with you, this sometimes is the only thing that keeps me from getting killed. So we've got this, and we've got this, and this one I love too. Controversial also. Some people do not like people to use these because they give the dog too much rein. I happen to love them because it lets the dog go kind of do some stuff that I don't have to join in. So, so this is not a dog training discussion. But what Cesar Millan, the dog whisperer, was doing is he was trying to bring the dogs back to their nature, to their original nature, to their selves as dogs. And so he'd go and he'd work with them, and I had many experiences like this of being with a fearful dog who did not want me to approach it, who was very scared, who was worried, that I was in its house. And I had to learn to soften my energy to the degree that I was completely submitted to that dog. Now, Murphy taught me this. I call Murphy the mayor of Spring Willow Court. I did not like to leash her, and there are leash laws. So she would wander around, and she'd just make friends. If you were, unloading groceries from your car and your door to your house was open, you might have an unexpected guest. But people started to expect that of Murphy. Murphy became sort of popular in my neighborhood, and we still talk about it to this day, though she's been gone for 13 years now. But what she taught me about that sense of submission was that you make a lot more friends that way. There's a good documentary about dogs that says the friendliest are the ones who thrive. So what he would do then, if the dog was not able to be around other dogs, if it was reactive, he would take it to this place he had created, which was this giant kind of just outdoor open space that was fenced in, and it was full of dogs, full of all these dogs he had found and people had gotten, and they're just random dogs. So he would take this this dog, this fearful dog, tail between the legs, and he would put it in there with them. And you might think that, oh my God, this is bad things are going to happen. What it did was it brought that little dog back into the company of other dogs, into the company of the nature of dogs. And so as I had that feeling, I started to get trained in energy work with animals, helping them to rebalance themselves. And it was about that time that I started coming here. There was something happening in my own little nature. Lots of things were just sparking and coming together. And the minute I walked into this place, I realized this is my nature. This is where I'm supposed to be. And I immediately started taking classes, and I went all the way through and became a practitioner because my dog had awakened me to my own self-consciousness, had shown me who I was in the greater scheme of things. And so what I know about dogs and what I know about God, what I think I know about God, is that, like Heather's reading said, we are in co-creative relationship with something higher than ourselves. We are a part of something that knows something that we don't know. It's the dogs together. It's the communication with the disabled, with the children, with the things that we can't intellectually, in our self-conscious selves, understand. So, though I don't have any dogs now, I have known so many dogs that I feel like kind of like a retired school teacher. If I run into them in the street, I'm like, hey! But I get to go home, and they get to go home, and we never the twain shall meet, and it's great. So I think I've said everything I had to say. I want you now, I'm going to wrap this up with this video I made that kind of tells what I've been talking about, I hope. So please enjoy this, and thank you for being here. Imagine yourself waking up from a dream where you threw a party for yourself and no one came. You realize that you're lonely and you're not sure why you're here. You begin to wonder if the world is any bigger than your own backyard. You feel different. You feel like you're not quite who you're supposed to be. Maybe you feel a little broken or like something's wrong with you. Maybe you're just tired of listening to things that don't make sense to you. Maybe that ladder you've been climbing for so long doesn't seem to lead anywhere. Maybe it seems like life is just blowing you around, or you feel too small to be seen. You might have a chip on your shoulder and act like you're tougher than you are in order to feel safe. You don't want people to see you for who you are. You keep them away. It feels easier to stay where you're comfortable, where you feel safe, or where you can hide behind someone you think is stronger than you are. So you pull the covers over your head and just go back to sleep. A new friend comes to you and says, "I have a new thought for you. Do you want to hear about it?" You get curious. Your ears perk up. You realize that you've actually been wanting to hear more, but didn't know who to listen to. Your friend lends you some books and you read them. You even devour some of them. Your mind is blown when you discover that there is so much more to this life than you realized. You mark the places that you want to return to learn more, and your mind starts to relax. Your friend tells you that it's okay to come out of your safe place. They invite you to another kind of party, a place where you would be so welcome. You'll meet others like you and some that you thought were different. They'll teach you how to see yourself differently, see the shadow places that you weren't aware of. They won't laugh at you, but they will teach you to laugh at yourself a little more. They're not concerned about who you sleep with. They don't even care who you marry or if you don't marry at all. They'll help your kids learn to play well with each other. They'll teach you to meditate and relax so that you can learn at your own speed. And if coffee's your thing, they serve a pretty good cup to go with your treats. You're intrigued. You wonder, though, if they'll accept you. You imagine a blissed-out group who have found the answers to life's questions and are just frolicking in them. You imagine what you'll need to endure to let them get to know you. You feel a little overwhelmed by everyone and everything you might come to know. Maybe you step back a bit and take some time to think about it, to question, is this who you really want to be? But you recognize that you've been limping through life and that you've been digging deeper and deeper and not getting anywhere. You've been splashing around in the shallow end of the pool for too long, but you know that it's time. You've come to realize that you're part of something bigger than yourself. So you put on your cape and you dive into the deep end of the pool. You come to realize that life is the ball and it is yours to retrieve. The more you practice, the easier it gets, and the more there is for you to experience beyond your backyard. Welcome back to your true nature, friend.